Good afternoon, everyone. If you can hear my voice, I am about to enter the June Keys penguin habitat to feed our penguins. It's going to be the last meal of the day for our birds. They get fed 3 times a day. Everyone has had at least 1 to 2 fish, which is great, and it means everybody is happy and healthy. So I'm going to go ahead and enter the habitat in just a minute. It's going to be a little tricky to talk while the birds are hungry, but I might be able to talk to you once the feeding has slowed down. But if you want to get a chance to see our birds eat, now would be the time to head on over to the June Keys penguin habitat. Good afternoon, everyone. If you're just joining us, I'm finishing up a feed for our Magellanic penguins. This is kind of a slow time for our birds in terms of food. It's actually settlement time. So if they were in their natural habitat, all of the males would be on shore. They arrive about 3 weeks prior to the females arriving on shore. If you want to know who's a male and a female here in the June Keys penguin habitat, if you look at the animal's flipper, the band is on their right flipper. They're a male, like this guy Gats here. If the band is on their left flipper, they're a female, like Miss D right here. But the males would be working really hard at building a nest. So if you look around the exhibit, there is a little bit of nesting material. Earlier this week, our birds began building their nests. We give them nesting material and they build their own nests the way they like. And you have to pay attention to their behavior, because when the female penguins start poking around at the nesting material, that's when we know it's almost time for them to lay an egg. So they go through the same seasons that they would in their natural habitat. It's just a little bit different because it's in a protected environment. But our males have started building nests for their females. They do mate for life. We do have some bachelors and bachelorettes. They're a little too young to have a mate. So they're just going to kind of hang out with each other and learn from the adults how to basically go into this breeding season, how to make a nest. And they observe the other birds. So you might notice a decrease in their appetite for a little bit, but then they'll start to bulk up again. When the females are ready to lay eggs, they lay 2 eggs about 3 to 5 days apart, and they take about 40 days to hatch. I am logging every single fish that these guys eat. It does help me keep track of them, and that's kind of how I know they've slowed down for the moment, and that's totally normal. If I were to look back in the records this time last year, we'd see the exact same trend. Although Fisher did have 12 herring yesterday. This is a herring here. It's the larger version of the fish that they like to eat. This is capelin. They do swallow their fish whole. If they were in their natural habitat, they'd eat small schooling fish, maybe some squid, krill. But here at the aquarium, they love their herring and kind of love their capelin. Here comes Floyd. Earlier today, I got Floyd to take some palm fronds into his nest. So I'm going to see if maybe he wants more palm fronds or he wants fish. Last time he wanted fish. But he's kind of giving me that eye. So if you give me... Oh, there's a gull above the exhibit. That could be why he's acting like that too. So if you give me just a minute, I'm going to go to the back and get that nesting material, because usually towards the end of the day, that's when they're feeling a little bit more inclined to build those nests. We use sanitized palm fronds. So basically the palm trees that you see growing behind the aquarium, these are the leaves that came from there, and they've been sanitized a lot so they're nice and clean for our birds. So I'm going to see if Mr. Floyd would like some of this. right, so that's an example of how they actually take the nesting material from us. I'm going to kind of hang out here for a few minutes and see if he wants any more nesting material. But this is the very, very beginning of breeding season. This is actually our 7th breeding season on exhibit in this habitat. And the really cool thing about working with these birds is that you get to observe them and kind of really get to know them. Floyd has actually had 7 out of the 13 chicks that have hatched here at the aquarium. And usually that last week of March is when they get really into building nests. So we're a little early, but we'll see if Floyd continues to get nesting material from me. I'm going to be out here for a few more minutes. I don't think our birds are going to eat any more food. I think they're done with that. But it looks like Floyd's interested in building a nest. And if you can see, he's stretching right now in between his body. He actually has what's called a brood patch. And that brood patch allows him to incubate the egg that the female lays. So Floyd's technique with collecting nesting material is that he has to have every single palm frond that I have in my hand. And if he doesn't, then he will just sit there until he gets all of them by dropping the rest. But the good news is we've spent a lot of time sanitizing these palm fronds, so I do have a lot for our birds. And since they're interested in that nesting material, I'm going to stay out here for a few more minutes doing that. If you go to explore.org, we actually have a live webcam for our birds, so you can see what they're doing 24/7. It actually helps me as a keeper sometimes, because I always wanted to know how Shim built a nest. Shim is a pretty sneaky guy, and he won't take palm fronds directly from my hand. So I actually watched the webcam one night, and I watched him stealing them from everybody else. So that's his technique. Avery there's at the water edge. He might want some palm fronds in just a minute. Again, this is something that our male penguins do. The female penguins really only mess around with the nest right before they lay an egg. And that gives me a little bit of a clue that they're going to lay eggs. So I'm going to be handing out some nesting material to our penguins. It is breeding season. This little dude right here, his name is Gats. He's only 1 year old. He's definitely not old enough to have a mate nor make a nest, but he's kind of trying to figure out what all this stuff is. He was actually raised on it. He did hatch here at the Aquarium of the Pacific. So I told you, he has to have as much nesting material as possible. So he's going into his nest, his burrow, and he is going to show Roxy that he's building her a beautiful nest, and hopefully she will follow him. That is not Roxy in front of his nest. That is Avery, another male penguin that's probably going to start stealing palm fronds. So I'm going to see if I can get him interested in this. The palm fronds that I have in my hand here. These guys, they really do what they want. I'm just here to kind of make sure they're taken, well, very well taken care of. But it's pretty fun to watch them just kind of hang out in their habitat. They've been a little bit relaxed today, so it's nice to see them getting into the nest building towards the end of the day. Looks like Avery's going to come on over. So the question was, how do I tell them apart? And I've worked with them for 8 years, so it's pretty easy now. When I first started, I really didn't think I was going to be able to tell them apart because besides these guys, our juveniles who are gray, they look different than the adults. They're kind of easy. Everybody kind of looks the same, but when you take some time to kind of look at their behavior, that's how I tell them apart. We also have color bands on them. Avery and Floyd are having a argument about palm fronds right now. But the colored bands that we have on them, that's one of the ways we can tell them apart. But in all honesty, Lily here acts different than her mate Matson. Floyd always hangs out in that area. So once you work with them enough, you can kind of see. Some of them can be a little bit grumpy at times, like Anderson. So I know if I get bit and I'm not looking, it's probably him. Some are a little bit more innocent, like Cleo here. But yeah, just working with them and spending time with them, you're able to tell them apart. The mammal trainers that work with our seals and sea lions, they can tell those guys apart, and I'm not able to tell them apart very well. I know Parker's the biggest one, that's about it. But yeah, it's just all about getting to know your animals. This is actually a really good time of year because their behaviors are very distinct and they're acting really bold. So that's one of the first breeding seasons was a chance for me to kind of know, okay, Avery walks like this, or he likes to eat like that, or things like that. But yeah, just spending time with them is the easiest way to tell them apart. And raising them helps too. So if you're just joining us, I am offering our Magellanic penguins some nesting material. It's the beginning of breeding season for our birds. This is what we call our settlement period because the males are occupying their burrows. Those are the 9 holes that you see behind me on either side. Those are modified into kennels. That allows our birds to rest, but right now, that allows them to build nests. So hopefully in a few weeks, we'll see some eggs. But right now, Floyd here is doing a really good job of building a nest for his mate Roxy. So I'm going to go ahead and hand him some nesting material. I'm going to try to give him all of it. So you guys probably saw me like pick all of this up 2 minutes ago, and then he just dropped half of it back on the ground. But he's building a great nest. This is one of the ways we have them collect nesting material. The other way is I stick some of it in the cracks and crevices of the habitat, and that way at night these guys can build their own nests. So if you hang out for a few minutes, you might see Floyd continue to build a nest. He might stop. This is just the very beginning of nesting time. And for the next 2 to 3 months, they're going to keep collecting nesting material even when they lay eggs because they want to keep their eggs and their chicks nice and dry. So they have layers upon layers of, in this case, palm fronds, but it could be pretty much anything that they can find in their habitat. These 3 right here are all brothers. Floyd and Roxy have actually had 7 out of the 13 chicks. So this is youngest one, Gats. Second youngest, Skipper, and Anderson was actually a penguin that we hand raised from day 1. And Floyd's actually fighting with his son, Wally, who probably won't give him enough space. Okay, Floyd might be done collecting nesting material for now, so I'm just going to stick the rest of this in the exhibit and go ahead and let these guys have their own time. I want to thank you for hanging out with them, and maybe he does want it, and enjoy the rest of your day here at the Aquarium of the Pacific.